Welcome to Lieven and Marcelo's Criminology podcast, a podcast hosted by Marcelo Aevi from the University of Lausanne, Switzerland, and Lieven Pauwels from Ghent University, Belgium. We aim to draw a map of the state of criminology across Europe through the words of contemporary criminologists. How is criminology defined and taught? Which are the main lines of research? Which are the main schools of thought in each country? These and many other questions are answered here by fellow researchers who share their vision on the development of criminology in their countries from its beginnings to the second decade of the 21st century. If you want to know and compare their stories, stay tuned.
Today we are interviewing Professor Miroslav Scheinost. Professor Miroslav Scheinost is the director of the Institute of Criminology and Social Prevention in the Czech Republic and head of the Czech Society of Criminology. He was co-organizer of the ESC Conference in Prague in 2014. His research interests are, among others, organized crime. This interview was conducted on the 23rd of May 2023.
Welcome, Miroslav Scheinost. It's really a pleasure to have you here on our podcast.
Welcome, Miroslav Scheinost. Welcome.
It's an honor for me to be invited to the podcast, and I will try to do my best to present the Czech criminology in this form. Yeah.
Okay, that is perfect. So we usually start by asking a very general question to everybody, and we start by asking how criminology is usually defined as it exists now in your country. Can you elaborate a little bit on the way criminology is viewed?
Answering this question, how the criminology is defined, is we should have a look into, let's say, two basic Czech textbooks on criminology. First was written in cooperation of law faculties in Pilsen and Brno. I may remember that one of the editors is Professor Válková, and the second one was written in collaboration of law faculty of Charles University in Prague, our institute, and Police Academy. I have the honor to be one of the editors. And I must say that the concept of criminology in both textbooks correspond. It is that criminology is defined as self-standing social science on criminality, its offenders and victims, and on the control of crime. And crime is understood as a social phenomenon, and we must study its phenomenology and etiology in order to be able to control and prevent it. I must underline a social phenomenon, not only as a crime under penal code. Yeah? It means broader concept, let's say, more from, let's say, sociological point of view. And criminology is recognized as the interdisciplinary science using mostly empirical approach. Again, it's typical for Czech criminology, this empirical approach, not so far theoretical. Of course, there has been discussed the relationship among criminology and mostly penal law in general, but it is respected that criminology necessarily deals also with the phenomena and processes existing outside the framework of criminal law. And in this sense, criminology overlaps with criminal law, and criminal law benefits from the knowledge that criminology provides. And I think it will be useful to have a look partly into the past, how this concept of criminology began. It is true that the institutional basis of Czech criminology may not have appeared until 1960, except of one thing. I must remind, there was a small department named the Institute of Criminology, and it was established at the German University in Prague in 1931 by Professor Maria Foltin, later Dean of Faculty of Law in the German University. But this institute has not any profound impact on the Czech environment. It was relatively isolated in the German not minority, by the German population in Prague, in Czech Republic. And despite the lack of institutional basis, the origin of this scientific field, I mean Czech criminology, reached much further back into the past, to the turn of the century. And as in other European countries, the beginnings of criminological thought arose from two areas: legal science and sociological reflection of social problems. I must again remind one name. In April 90, Josef Prušák, he was lawyer, judge, professor of criminal law at Charles University, for the first time used the term criminal science to define the study of crime as a social phenomenon caused by individual, social, and natural factors. What is interesting, he distinguished between criminal anthropology, which studies the personality of perpetrator, and criminal sociology, which studies the social roots of criminality. The criminological view of criminality as a social phenomenon and social problem was also nurtured by the works of several distinguished sociologists of Czech origin, and notably, it is even the classic work of Tomáš Masaryk, sociology and the first president of the independent Czechoslovakia, because he wrote in 1878 a study, Suicide as a Mass Phenomenon of the Modern Age. Suicide is not a crime, but it's a social pathological phenomenon. And he, maybe for the first time, used also empirical data, statistical data on suicide. So maybe we may to keep it as one of the roots in the beginnings of the criminological viewing of social problems. So it means that the outstanding Czech criminologist, the early 20th century, was not the work of, in quotation, pure criminologists. There were not any, but rather originated from the application of a criminological approach to the problems of criminality by lawyers on the one side and sociologists on the other side. And I must say that this needed to recognize that lawyers have a much broader scope of view than only narrow application of the penal law. Yeah? I think this approach to the criminology, this concept, is kept till now. Yeah.
Thank you for this introduction. So you already started talking about these institutes of criminology, how they develop, and currently, which is the situation? Are there programs that are being taught?
Yeah. Again, maybe some quotation historical words. Criminology in the first half of the 20th century was developed mostly at universities. But in times of Nazi occupation, Czech universities were closed, totally closed. So it means that even criminology dismissed from the surface. Yeah? They couldn't be developed as an academic discipline. And even at the German university, because mentioned Professor Foltin fled Nazis to US and never returned back. And there were only 3 years between the Second World War and the communist takeover in 1948. And what followed after communists take into power, it meant generally distortion of humanities by vulgarized Marxism. And it was also with regard to criminology. If we put the question whether the criminology was needed or not, the answer was no, not at all. Why? Because there will be no crime in classless society. Crime is the result of social class conflict. So we will establish a classless society. There will be no crime. But if there will be any crime, is a relic of defeated classes, is a political delict, and must be solved by another means. So that's why we need not any criminology. No crime, no criminology. But of course, it was only ideology. The optimistic predictions about the gradual disappearance of criminality were, of course, soon found to be illusory. We cannot solve criminality by ideological means. Again, criminality has been part of human society since its very beginnings, and ideology cannot address its problems. Criminality naturally did not disappear from socialist society and couldn't be overlooked, downplayed, or even denied. And the practical approach based on adequate knowledge was needed. This need led to renewed interest in science of criminality, or perhaps it can be said that the answer to the question of whether we need criminology was provided by practical experience, which ran quite contrary to ideological slogans. But paradoxically, it may seem that the totalitarian regime, which ideologically distorted most of the humanities and completely eliminated others, permitted criminology to exist here. But it was needed there. And in the 1960s, a humble institutional base was created. It was an institute that was originally named the Criminal Science Research Institute. It was more of an acknowledgement of need rather than the benevolence of the regime yet. The institute was soon renamed the Criminology Research Institute, is our predecessor, and began working on mostly empirical criminological research. At that time, in the 60s, in addition to this Criminological Research Institute, there also existed for a limited time the criminological section of the Department of Criminal Law, which was a joint workplace of the Charles University Faculty of Law and Institute of State and Law of the Czechoslovak Academy of Science, but only for a short time. This Criminological Research Institute was initially a joint research facility of the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of the Interior, and the Prosecutor General's Office, General Prosecutory. It was by the Soviet model, and Prosecutory Office was a self-standing institution, not submitted under the Ministry of Justice. And, of course, there were some ideological limits. Every social scientist must be at least formally Marxist. Yeah. And Marxism was a theoretical basis of all research in humanity. But despite this fact, work went on at this institute in analyzing work from abroad, of transferring the knowledge from abroad as far as possible, where the development of criminology had not been disrupted. And the main field was empirical research focusing on the criminality of youth, criminal recidivism, criminal trends, post-penitentiary care, and so on. From a historical perspective, this rich research activity thus shifted Czech criminology from the academic sphere as before the Second World War to the applied empirical science. And again, this tradition of this shift is still valid because most of the Czech criminology is oriented on empirical research, in less extent of some theoretical reflection. It's a mistake, in my opinion, but it's a question of capacity. It was also one motivation because this focus on empirical research made possible to avoid, to a certain degree, ideological restriction in the realm of theory. It has clearly been the fate of the Czech criminology that we had to face some pitfalls and problems because after so-called Prague Spring in 1968 till now in late 60s, the criminological research developed quite, let's say, good, but after the interruption of Prague Spring, after the Soviet occupation and so on, was another turning point, followed by the period of so-called, in quotation, normalization, which means more strict ideological restrictions and supervision, and political oversight. The development of criminology was again hindered. Ideological pressure continually increased. The institute was accused of non-Marxist deviations, was very serious accusation, but as a result, certain researchers were forced to end their scientific careers and leave. Among other, Professor Novotný, the head of the institute, very prominent Czech lawyer and criminologist, and he was allowed to return only after 1989 as another old man, but at least for, let's say, 10 years again. He must renew his career. But even under these conditions, criminology survived. Even though its standard bearers were forced more or less willingly to submit the ideological oversight. In 1978, the first Czech criminology textbook was published by a collection of authors. Also, it was naturally shaped by the ideology of this time. And the Research Institute, Criminological Research Institute, continued to maintain the tradition of empirical research and produced some interesting studies. For example, the criminal personality, which was very good study, youth delinquency, and group criminal activities. And what was important, lectures on criminology were once again permitted at law school. Now, a few words about the situation after 1989. Yes.
Before we go after 1990, yes, you know that in Western Europe there were many Marxist criminologists praising the system that theoretically was going to be introduced. Did you at any time have discussions with these people? Was there any connection?
Of course, since the so-called Velvet Revolution, we try to keep contacts with our colleagues from the Europe, from countries where the development of criminology was not interrupted by such way as in our country. I think our problem is not in the fact that we do not know so-called critical criminology, which is partly influenced by Marxism. Not vulgarized Marxism is another thing. Yeah? We know we knew Marxism only. It was presented by only one right way, and it was often vulgarized. when we try to keep contact to orient ourselves in critical criminology, but it is a kind of reaction of the previous period. And maybe we Czech are in certain sense the people who go from one side directly to the other side. What was before is wrong, is out, and we must be different. And sometimes we say farewell even to the things and ideas which not deserves such a divorce. Yeah? And maybe this is the reason why the so-called critical criminology is not so popular, and it's hard to find any criminologist of the Czech origin whose thinking is near to Marxist or Marxist basis. Among younger colleagues, there are some which could be called, let's say, critical criminologists. They see social problems, serious social problems. They observe them. For example, the problem of so-called socially excluded areas. We have some of them, not merely ghettos, but socially deprived areas with concentration of poverty, of course, Romani population and so forth. And our colleagues are able to see the social roots of it, the lack of social care, of adequate policy to solve it. But I don't want to call it a Marxist approach. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we can move to what happened after the end of the regime.
So the situation was basically changed. Any ideological barriers went down. And what we faced an enormous growth of registered crime, because the number was registered. It was a similar situation as in many other post-socialist countries, maybe with exception of Slovenia, maybe, but in all other post-socialist countries, the registered crimes went up. Yeah. In the Czech Republic, till 1993, the number of registered crimes tripled. So we face the unusual situation, speaking of the growth of crime, and speaking of the need to establish new economic system, social system, the political system, free market, and a quite different economy with partly new legislation. So it was a big challenges which went beyond the possibility and capacity of the Czech criminology, not to numerals. Yeah. So we focused. I work in the institute since 1990. So we have to focus on urgent empirical research, even stronger, more so than before. Yeah. In this situation, this focus on empirical research was entirely subordinate to the practical needs of sentencing policy, criminal legislation, preventive work, because in 1993-4, there was established a new system of crime prevention, and so on and so on. And this situation did not leave very much room for deeper theoretical contemplation. So we adopted some patterns, some theories from abroad. We put on the file many pieces of knowledge, but we were not able of some deeper theoretical reflection. We put short and quick studies for concrete needs of ministries of justice or governmental committee of crime prevention, of legislative bodies, and so on and so on. And our Institute of Criminology and Social Prevention is still the only one institution specialized on empirical criminological research. We are submitted under the Ministry of Justice. We are mostly finalists from this ministry, We have 24.
They're coming for you, Miroslav.
We have 24 workplaces within its 19 researchers and 5 people of staff. There is also the Department of Criminology of the Police Academy. It's the second one of such facilities of the Czech, but the staff is only 5 or 6 people, and they devote themselves mostly to teaching, not too much time for their own research. The topic of criminology has been for years the main program of annual seminars organized by the so-called section of social pathology of the Czech Sociological Society, but it was and it is rather oriented on social work than the pure criminology. A very substantial step was made in 2012 when the Czech Criminological Society was established. It was 47 people at the establishing assembly. Now we have about 180 members. Of course, they are not all criminologists. There are not so much criminologists in the Czech Republic, but we wanted to provide a platform not only for criminologists conducting research and teaching in the field, but also professionals and students interested in or using criminological knowledge in their work. It means people for prison service, probation and mediation service, social work, prevention, judiciary, and so on. And I think that we were quite successful in this intention. In 2014, we organized the European Criminal Conference in Prague, as you know, as you remember. And Czech Criminological Society also published a specific journal called Czech Criminology. It is published in Czech. Sometimes there could be some article in English. It is since 2016, twice per year. It is published online with open access, and it's published with some modest financial support of the Czech Academy of Science. So, let's say, besides the teaching at university, the institutional basis of the Czech criminology now.
You mentioned that the society was created in which year?
2012.
Just before the conference.
Because we wanted to organize conference 2013, but Hungarian Budapest was before.
Yes, I remember the discussion. Okay, so yeah, that's a good point on how it is taught. And you have a program there at the Charles University, and are there any other universities that are teaching?
Yeah. I must say that criminology has not been taught as a self-standing discipline till now, as a specialized discipline. It is not taught at any of the Czech faculties. It is not possible to reach the bachelor or master's in criminology within, let's say, 5 years specialized study program. But it is taught as a subject at law faculties in Prague, in Brno, in Pilsen, Olomouc, Ostrava, and other cities. And partially, criminology is also lectured as a part of sociology, social work, social politics, or security policy, which is very broad concept, whatever is in security policy, at some faculties, including the private ones. There are some private universities that also included in their study program some topics or issues in criminology. It means that there is not any general national program of teaching criminology. Each faculty decides about the content and orientation of criminological lectures given the main discipline. law, sociology, social work, and so on. On the other side, many faculties elaborated their own short textbooks in criminology that go beyond the boundaries of the original discipline and offer broader information to university students. With regard to the broad scope of discipline where the criminological topics have been lectured, it is worthy, of course, to take into consideration whether some coordination of criminological education would be useful. It would be. And in the Criminological Society, we discuss, or have been discussing for some time, to try in collaboration with academicians to try to coordinate, at least partly, the content of these lectures. We would like that students from above-mentioned disciplines may acquire some common basis consisting in theoretical overview of criminology, overview on use of criminological research methods. You only to know what methods are used in criminology and to be prepared to ask questions and to use the results. Yeah? And beyond this common basis, some selected information needed for their specialization. But we are at the beginning of these discussions. To this situation, the criminologists in the Czech Republic still originate from lawyers, sociologists, psychologists, more rarely from other sciences. Unfortunately, I don't know any economist who would like to become a criminologist. It's a pity, I think, but it is. But it is possible now, or let's say in the last 6, 7, 8 years, to write the master and PhD thesis on criminological topics at more faculties, and quite enough students are interested in writing them. Me, I was a školitel. I led some this thesis of students at law faculty and the police academy. Some Czech students studied for some time criminology at West European universities. Eva Moravcová in Lausanne, but also in England, Netherlands, but only a small number of them, maybe 3 or 4 from them now work on Czech universities. That is why we also cannot speak about some generation boundary between old criminologists originated from other disciplines and new young criminologists that graduated in criminology, simply because there are not many of the latter ones. But I hope that in the near future, this situation might change. I would like that when the young Czech criminologists may study on the same university and then come back and develop the criminology here, I think it would be very, very fruitful and positive situation for the Czech criminology. Just now, also the Czech Criminological Society developed some discussion with universities about the possibility how better establish criminology as a study program at master or at least PhD degree, and with regard to the multidisciplinary character of criminology. We see that the mutual overlap of more departments and specialization would be necessary. We discuss now about the possibility of collaboration of 2 faculties here in Prague, Faculty of Arts, especially Department of Sociology, which was headed by Jiří Buriánek. He's still been working on this chair, and Faculty of Law, especially Department of Penal Law, for this moment at the Charles University in Prague. It's not so easy, it's a complicated task, but we go step by step. Hopefully we will be successful in some near future.
Okay, and in terms of research, I know it's difficult to do research when the discipline is not established, but is there something going on? I've seen your presentations at the ESC, so I know there's something going on. But perhaps you can tell us something.
Speaking on the research, it's maybe same situation as we even spoke about, let's say, different schools in criminology. So I cannot speak about some visible different paradigms in criminological research in the Czech Republic, because the basis is still too narrow for some distinct differentiation. Generally, our criminological research is still rather applied and follows the current social demand. Of course, the criminological research must be based on some theoretical basis, but the differentiation among our criminologists from this point of view is not so significant. As I said, maybe it is possible that there are some younger criminologists that may be called critical criminologists. They focus on the, let's say, visible social problems, the type of social excluded area. Yeah. Speaking of theoretical background, we may observe the influence of modern concept of criminology stem from the work of Bourdieu, Bauman, and so on. It is normal, useful, and beneficial shit, which I may observe. I may add that criminologists that originate from sociology more inclined to the quantitative methods of research and to the deeper statistical processing of data. By my opinion, maybe too much. I'm also sociologist originally, but nothing can be exaggerated. Within the work of criminologists originating from other disciplines, we may observe a greater share of qualitative methods. But it is really only very rough estimation. It depends mostly on the subject of research and on the possibility to gain needed data and their character. And if I should by some way characterize key topics of the criminological research now, a good deal belongs to the research doing for criminal policy, and it's also related to the application of penal law. For example, research on the effectiveness of conditioned release from the prison with regard to the factors stimulating recidivism, application of suspended sentences. Electronic monitoring is a big issue within last years, because we introduced the electronic monitoring. There was not the bracelets. When there were bracelets, the judges were very reserved to use this kind of penalty. Now we have no bracelets, there is new tender for you, and so on and so on. So we studied the application of this institute, but this institute during our study partly dismissed, which was a very strange situation. But that is only as a rather a joke, but it was not joke. There is also research for the needs of prison system. For example, the research on the application of so-called open prison and its result, the open prison facility, in order to better prepare prisoners to be released to the life on. So this kind of prison was established here 4 years ago, and we were charged to make some evaluation about the results. Again, the complication during this time came the COVID pandemics, and many conditions changed. So it was no possibility to exactly compare the people released from this prison, open prison, and people released from normal prison, let's say, because even this open prison was by some kind limited in the activity due to the due to the pandemic. But it was one example. The second one may be on the results of introducing new internal differentiation in prisons. 4 years ago, this differentiation was modified. We have 4 categories of prisons, differentiated according to the degree of security. Now there are only 2 ones, and prison service was entrusted by more extensive authority to internal differentiation of prisoners within these 2 categories. And again, it's necessary to make some evaluation how it is applied and how it's functions. The research attention is also paid to the Institute of Security Detention for people that the penalty finished, but they couldn't be released because of some risk factors of personality and so on. Traditional object of our research interest here in Czech Republic has been criminality and pre-criminality of youngsters. Just now, there is a research project that is focused on the issue how the justice system deals with the issue of pre-criminality of children. The age of penal responsibility in the Czech Republic is 15 years of age. It means that under this age limit, as the offender the child is treated under the special law and provided by a special treatment. And of course, when some serious deed is committed by a child under 15, always is a broad discussion in media and on the political field, whether this age is reasonable or not, and so on and so on. So now we run the project that study the way of treatment of this child in the judicial system, in the judiciary, what is applied and so on and so on, in which extent it is effective or not. In the same time, we work on the smaller study about young girls that were sent by decision of court into the diagnostic center, where they are for some time treated to decide about suitable following treatment and within which institution. Again, what is doing with them in this diagnostic study? Their problems, family problems, social problems, and so on and so on. Criminal career, pre-criminal career. And criminality of youngsters has been traditionally studied also by people from Czech of Sociology at the Faculty of Arts, as Jiří Buriánek and his colleagues. ISRD study, self-report studies, and so on. A big topic is effectiveness of preventive measures. It is one of the most complicated tasks, by my opinion, how to evaluate preventive programs from the point of view of their effectiveness on decreasing crime and increasing security, either situational or social preventive programs. Such a research starts just now in collaboration of 2 private small research associations, as the contracting authority is the Czech Ministry of Interior that has been charged by coordination of the Czech system of crime prevention. Traditional key topics have been, of course, drugs from different point of view. Now, for example, there is a project on treatment of drug-addicted prisoners before releasing, especially the continuity between penitentiary and post-penitentiary treatment. Our director, Dr. Zeman, is the head of this research project. Another key topic is victimological research. We try to repeat it each 5 years on the representative sample of population, keeping the same methodology if possible, in order to be able to compare the results. Similarly, the public opinion on crime, fear of crime, crime prevention has been relatively regularly explored. Among other topics, we are also representing such as domestic violence, organized crime, and so on. It's quite broad spectrum. Some of them are more deep, some of them are only partial studies, of course.
Okay, so you gave us a good overview, and perhaps do you think that criminology is having any impact on criminal policy, on what is being decided by the government to fix as priorities?
Very hard question, very complicated to answer. I would like to say that we have a deep impact on the formulating of criminal policy, on the funding of research, and so on. But I think that we know that criminological knowledge has only seldom any direct impact on criminal or social policy. The way of criminological findings or recommendations towards policymakers is usually indirect and complicated, but to be more optimistic, the possibility to influence the formation of policy exists. Even it depends often on the willingness and ability of politicians to hear the voice of researchers. The problem, by my opinion, consists in the usual and natural needs of politicians to obtain, prepare simple and cheap solution of complex and long-term problems, and moreover, solution that brings a visible, successful result till the next elections, if possible. And usually, criminology is not able to offer such a solution. It's not so easy to persuade them that most matters of criminality require patient, long-term, and many-sided work that, of course, need also some funding. Yeah? But, as I said, sometimes it's possible to contribute to the process of creation of respective policies. I may present some examples. The study of our institute contributed to the adoption of the Institute of Security Detention in the beginning of this century. And we proposed also some basic principles to set up the system of crime prevention in the Czech Republic. The 4 years research project on the application of the new penal code, which was adopted in 2000, helped to adopt some amendments to eliminate at least some negative impact of some provision of penal code concerning the excessive punishment of repeated small property offences. He presented relevant arguments against the decrease of the age limit of penal responsibility of youngsters in the parliament in the frame of discussion about the proposal to do it, which were put on the table of politicians. But I hope that even our arguments help to refuse it. So the problem is not the age limit, but the problem is how to do with them, how to relate, how afford, how care, and so on. It is, by my opinion, the maximum what researcher may do. I mean, the criminologist is obliged to provide the politician by relevant, valid information and arguments in comprehensible form. It's not so easy, but even the researchers must learn how to do it. Yeah. And maybe some other disciplines have deeper impact than economists, surely. For example, the state budget of the Czech Republic suffers now by a huge deficit. National Economic Council, which is advisory body of the Czech government, proposed several provisions what to do to reduce it. I may mention, among others, the proposal to reduce the number of police officers, the number of prisoners, and also the number of state research organizations. It not sounds very nice for us, but I don't want to be sarcastic, but the proposal to decrease the number of prisoners sounds very attractive, and I support, of course, this goal. But I am afraid that the solution cannot consist only in a one-shot administrative act. Such a solution is a typical paradigmatic example of need to adopt and accomplish very well targeted, systematic, and long-term effort based on relevant criminological knowledge. As an example, the last presidential amnesty in 1913 reduced the prison population quite enough, but without the change of penal and social policy, and the number or quantity of prison population as before amnesty was reached within 2 years again. But the economists did not ask neither us nor the social workers for about our opinion. I am rather optimist, yes.
Okay. And one question that we like to ask our interviewees is how did the crime change during their lifetime?
I said my professional lifetime in criminology starts in 1990, when I came into the ESC. It was the very beginning of the period of transformation. There were very profound social, political, economic change that was followed in the Czech Republic, like in some other European post-socialist countries, by a steep increase of registered crime. I said the number tripled in very short time. It means that there was a great fear of crime. The real level of crime, even after this triplification, was, let's say, at the quotation normal level of Western countries. The difference was in the speed of this process. Even this way, within 3 or 4 years, it was a kind of shock for our society. And there's also one thing, we cannot simply compare the crime within the socialist society and within the new society, democratic, with new political model, the market economic model, and so on. We cannot simply put the numbers aside, 1 to 1. What was characteristic for this process of growth, it was, by my opinion, one thing. This growth was caused not by old criminals, the recidivists. We could suppose that the old criminals saw the new possibility, new chance to develop their criminal activity. But it was not true. This growth was caused by newcomers, by new people, by first-time offenders, by people till this time behave in accordance with the law, keeping the law. And the share of these newcomers, first offenders, was more than 2/3 among known offenders, which was very, very characteristic feature of the crime of this year. Of course, there arose new forms of crime that were not developed before the transformation. Economic crime, quite new form of economic crime, because they developed a new economic environment. Even organized crime, some forms of organized crime was here, of course, or very here, but they developed quickly the forms usual in other countries, in Western countries, and we were not prepared. We criminologists make some warnings in the topic or issue of drugs. There works, of course, a drug market in the Czech Republic, but there was small market of domestic drugs, of chemicals products, and so on. And again, the state was not prepared on the impact of international drug market, and we were for years a transit country for drugs, for prostitution, but in the same time we became also the target country. So it was new falls, and we had to react in some way. and the situation stabilized maybe after 10, 15 years, let's say. And since maybe 15 years ago, we see the decrease in crime, in registered crime again. But I think it's a real decrease of crime. Similarly, it is or was in European countries. It was a general trend of last year. I could cite the situation during the COVID pandemic, some special, and the decrease was even much more visible, but it was an extraordinary situation. And last year, after COVID, the numbers went again slightly up, but still they keep this decreasing tendency. And I think it was due to the situation that the society became to be more differentiated, but more stable than in the period of transformation. And the number of first-time offenders decreased. That, by my opinion, in quotation again, normal measure about 30-35%, and the rest are again recidivists. So some core or recidivists are again often seen, and I think it's more normal than the situation in the 90s. It's now, I think the situation speaking on the, let's say, structure of crime is similar as in other countries. Maybe it's some exception. The share of foreigners among our non-perpetrators, among offenders, is smaller than, for example, in France, in Germany, in Austria, and so on. Foreigners living or coming in the Czech Republic form only 8 or 9% of all non-offenders and of all crimes. It's not so many. And again, most of those foreign offenders are people from most numerous nationalities living for years in the Czech Republic. As Slovaks, they became foreigners for us. As Ukrainians, as Vietnamese. And Vietnamese are very numerous minority. And there was some fears from people from Far East, Middle East, as illegal migrants and so on. But these fears were not, they just become true in fact. And this is the picture now. The half of all crime is, as usual, property crimes. About 8% is violent crime. 8 or 10% is economic crime, of course, with huge damages. Plus 2% sexually motivated crime, but we know there is high latency, of course. And the rest are the other crime, as it is drugs, negligent crimes, and so on and so on. But most of them are, of course, property crimes. But now we ask what will be, because maybe the period of stability is slightly going over. There is economic problems. I spoke about of money in the state budget. There are fear of people, of unstable situation, of inflation, of rising prices, of the war in Ukraine. We are much more differentiated society, where is not so strong the middle class. Till now, we have not the real crime stemming from real poverty, except of such the socially excluded areas. But there are not so many people in them. What will be now? Because the impact of rising prices, of the problems of living standards, may become greater, and we still must see that the comparison of my standard and general standard is even relative. I may live quite good, but I may evaluate myself to be poor. And if I am poor, I may maybe even trespass or go beyond the limit of law. So we are partly afraid about the development in near future. We were not used to solve the crime of ghettos, of real poverty, and so on. But even if the poverty will not be so strong, he may be relatively. And it's one of key challenges that we may face into the near future. Other challenges are, of course, the shift of crime into the virtual space, computer crime, and so on, and so on. We may ask whether this decrease of registered crime is partly an impact of shift of crime into the virtual space. We are not able to trace it to detect it. Maybe it's also a key challenge. But we will see that.
Miroslav, you put the moment when crime starts going down in which period?
Let's say 10 or 12 years ago, this decrease started.
After 2010.
And we asked if it is a mistake in statistic or if it is real. But it was real. It was a real decrease.
Yeah. So after 2010.
Let's say, yeah.
Yeah, that's more or less what we have seen. We've been telling for a long time that the decrease in Europe, I mean, homicide was going down since the early 1990s, a little bit later in Central Europe, but
slightly later because of the development in 90s. It was the contrary.
Exactly. But the other crimes were not going down in most of the European countries. It was different in a few. Yes, it was true, like in the UK, but it started at very different times. And this is something logical, I think, because there are different cultures, different societies. To try to give a general trend for all to go down at the same time was impossible. And which is a little bit contradictory is that it started going down after the big economic crisis.
I may say that till now, we have any real or deeper economic crisis. Of course, so-called financial crisis that started in the US before some years had some impact also on the Czech Republic. But we went over this crisis, this crisis without some greater problems, yeah. We went over. But now the impact of this situation in the world, in Europe, in the crisis, and so on, is deeper. Is deeper, and people see it and feel it. Yeah, and the social differentiation is deeper now. So it means that non-privileged parts of the society are in worse situation, facing this social and economic situation.
Yeah, okay. And still, the prison population rate of the Czech Republic.
So, when I should mention the index of prison population, our index last year is 178. Mm-hmm. It means we are in the, let's say, first third on positions in a comparison of European countries. We are not among the worst, but we are not good. Yeah. It's still quite enough. England, 131, as far as I know. Netherlands, 60. Belgium, 93. And we, 1978. It is decreased. In 2018, our index was 223. So our prison population went down, but it is still quite enough. Speaking of the composition of prison population, there are some very problematic point of views. One, the percentage of imprisoned women went up quite visibly. In 2008, we had 5.5% of women among prison population. Now we have about 10% of women. In absolute numbers, in 2008, there was, let's say, 900 women in the prison, and now it's 1,500 women in the prison. Sure, we can say it's the result of changing position of women in the society. They go to the higher position. They may decide on the position of managers. But on the other side, we see that they are more vulnerable, facing the several kinds of steals of and so on. And some of women are in prison as debtors and they lend money and they are not able to pay. They solved it by nuance and nuance, and finally they end in prison. It doesn't make a sense. Yeah. The other problem is that many people in our prisons are sentenced to short sentences till 1 or 2 years. Now it's 30% of our prisoners are sent to the prison till 1 year, the length of 1 year. Again, has it sense? And people sentenced to imprisonment since 1 to 2 years created 20%. So it seems that our prison didn't fulfill what we need from that. And it means that we fail in the area of alternative measures, conditioned sentence, custody, financial, fine penalties, and so on and so on. There are conditional sentence and so on. This kind of alternative measures are not sufficient enough, and people at in prison, which should be really the last provision. And if we have 20% or maybe 30% people in prison for 1 or 2 years, it's not good situation. And it is our problem, yeah? It's a problem of the overcrowding of our prison. But it is a question of long-term penal policy and, of course, of social policy. One of our research projects now is about the efficiency of conditional release from the prison with overview of the probation service. And the efficiency is not so good as it should be. It's issue of our interest now. And we need to solve it, but it takes time, and it's not so easy to reduce the prison population. There is opinion of people, of public opinion, that criminals should be put into the prison. Yeah? The more is better.
Yeah, it's true that, let's say that the Czech Republic is one of the few countries in which the percentage of women increased a little bit. You still are at only 8%, but it's true that the average in Europe is 5%, and this is a characteristic of the Czech Republic. Hungary also have a similar rate. In most countries, it's a little bit lower. But don't you think that also long-term sentences are playing a role? Because usually when shorter sentences are abolished, there is a risk of the judges applying longer sentences.
There were some idea among politicians to put into the law as a provision that the prisoner must be released after 2/3 of imprisonment. Must be, but it's nice. It could reduce the prison population, but on the other side, would be the impact on the decision of judges. So they put longer sentence, longer penalty, because the judge will take into account that the prisoner will be released after 2/3 of the original sentence. So it's not the way. Must be in better, let's say, social policy, better effectiveness of alternative sentences, better preparation of prisoners to be released on the life on outside the prison.
Okay, it's really really good to have talked. I will check a little bit at these figures of prisons, because what I see is that you have very few sentences of less than 6 months. Then you have from 6 months to 1 year, 17%. And so maybe your upper limit is a little bit high, you know. For example, in other countries, they have more short sentences, but this implies that it moves quite quickly, you know. But okay, it's a matter, it's interesting to study. Then you have a lot between 1 and 3 years, according to the space statistics. You have like 40% of the population there from 1 to 3 years.
You see, it was also a matter of formulation of the penal law, because petty property crimes should be sentenced and are sentenced, but conditional sentence. And so on. But there was a provision on special recidivism, and if somebody commit the same petty property crime again with a milder damage, he should be sent into the prison as a recidivist. Why? And this was one of the reasons of this high number of short sentences, or even longer sentences, if it was committed for 3 times, 4 times, and so on. But still, this is petty crimes, and there is not any sense to send those people into the prison.
No, but that makes sense. This explanation makes sense. Looking at the distribution, you have like a mandatory sentence for recidivists, and then they go there. That is why it starts after 6 months. Probably the minimum should be 6 months or something like that. Yeah. Okay, Miroslav, that was really interesting to discuss with you. Thank you very much for taking the time.
It's one invitation for this possibility. I hope we see soon, really, personally.
No, it was really good.
European Conference.
Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you for following Lieven and Marcelo's Criminology podcast. This podcast is edited by Eduardo Coco from the University of Lausanne. Our theme song is Seagull's Night, Noche de Gaviotas, composed by Gustavo Cantero, arranged by Tato Germano, and played by Tato and Gustavo with the voices of Sasha Conte and Alejandro Turco Gujot. Your host are Lieven Pauwels from Ghent University, Belgium, and Marcelo Evi from the University of Lausanne, Switzerland. Cheers, and see you soon.